We're over 2 years into development of this seat, not only in the lab, but in a full real-life racing environment. We've had some gnarly shunts, some big crashes, and some very successful races with these new seats. We've been really nitpicking.
So I've been in the off-road, my whole life. I've been racing professionally for 10 or 15 years now, and immediately when Vaughn got into the Ultra 4 trucks and saw, the need for the seat, he's been working with RECARO and kind of taken our insight and all of our knowledge from all these years to build a much safer seat. This new technology, that's safer and better than anything that's available out on the market.
In my on-road activities for as long as I can remember, I've had RECARO seats in my cars. I mean, all my Mustangs I buy, I check the box for the RECARO seat option. All of my race cars have RECAROs. And frankly, I probably should have just reached out to them in the first place when I was switching to off-road to, collaborate with them. So I'm best known for, what I do drifting my Mustang. But a few years ago, I made the jump to start having some fun in Ultra 4. I had the opportunity to do a race, fell in love with this really, challenging, fun sport. Through that process, I effectively just kind of followed the lead of the experts in that world with what equipment to use, specifically safety equipment. I was constantly having to adjust my belts, so taking my hands off the wheel, adjusting the belts. During big hits, I knew that I was, effectively blowing through the cushion with my load and the G's, which at a point, I felt was kind of accelerating me, right? Any movement is bad, and I knew that I was moving more than I should during those hits. And I was just waiting for that one time to bottom out on the seat. I very quickly realized that technology in this space with respect to seating was very behind the times.
Coming into this market, there's really no seats that are developed for the off-road application. So that was our large overview task. We also tried, starting out in the beginning, 3 different versions of RECARO race shells that were available to us to see which bolster height, which type of head protection or lumbar protection, which seat's size would fit the best for this market, so that we kind of winnowed it down to a couple of different options and had him actually drive in those. We were able to come up and find the one that actually fit this market and then adapt it from there. One of the RECARO DNA we talk about all the time is looking at the safety aspect of your seat, looking at the safety aspect of how your seat is designed to meet the human body's requirements. Spinal protection and spinal injuries occur when you don't have the right support under that tailbone and under the spine. So part of what we have been working on in this is developing tests, developing different technology, working on doing everything we can to have the seat absorb the energy and not the spine absorb the energy.
So while RECARO is doing all of their testing and validation, we actually had a pretty bad accident that was honestly, one of the best validations that you can have despite, somebody getting injured. We were in King of the Hammers. We're at King of the Hammers running the desert loop, running in some dust, not really pushing too hard, but we hit a major G out and the truck fully compressed and then flipped completely over, ended up landing on its wheels, but it was just a massive hit. Like, it was one of those hits, you're like, what just happened? And I heard my co-driver, very clearly he was hurt. And I was in our RECARO prototype and he was in the other hard shell. I wasn't comfortable putting my co-driver in a prototype seat that hadn't been validated. Trusted, the validation of the other brand, other company. I feel good in my decision. I didn't want to put him in something that wasn't tested. It was my decision. I knew what we were testing. I was comfortable with it for myself. I wasn't going to make that decision with him. And unfortunately, in that crash, he suffered a broken back, and I was able to go on and and be okay with just a little bit of soreness. To me, that was the moment that I was so excited about what we were doing, because I've heard so many horror stories of people having very similar issues with very similar G-out situations. And, I was obviously very upset that my co-driver got hurt, but very ecstatic and called RECARO and let them know what was going on. And, between that real world testing and the testing that's been done in the lab, we knew that we were in the right direction. and the refinement continued. Once we built that box, we then organized a real test. RECARO sent their engineers out, we instrumented Brocky, and went and did a real test day.
So once we record all of this data in the vehicle, we will have basically the triangulation of all of the data, and we can replicate that on our shaker table back in Plymouth. He's gonna go find some whoops, get some really like severe G data so that we can record it and see what it looks like.
So during that testing, we wanted to mimic real world as best we could. We had small chop, medium whoops, deep whoops, jumps, full bottom outs, and even a massive tumble down a huge rock climb. I mean, the average that we were seeing G-force was, between 2 and 8. The small chop was, 1.5 to 2. The medium would be in the middle, and then up to 8 on the big bottom out hit.
About 20 Gs.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, so you impacted your butt 20 Gs into the bottom of that seat.
I don't even feel my back out all right now.
Thank you, RECARO.
Yeah, right?
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's why we engineer safe, comfortable seats right
Yeah,
there.
that's a big hit. So just to give you an idea, hitting a speed bump at 35 miles an hour is like 0.75 Gs. So we're obviously way off the Richter scale. So now we're armed with real world feedback from my initial testing, real world data from their instrumentation and everything that we did during the test days with Brocky. So they brought all that information back here to the RECARO validation lab and got to work.
We've been watching the development for, the last 2 or 3 years with Vaughn, and, this is kind of the next stage of the development, and they've really increased the foam technology, changed the seating position a little bit to, kind of fit around some of the bigger guys, and really are pushing the safety on the new seats.
So some of the things that we had come across as we were working through this is actually using foam technology that we've never used in automotive. It's used in other racing applications, but it's been something that's been a big learning curve for us as well, because this is really interesting technology that we're putting into this seat that our normal application in automotive seating wouldn't have. So by doing that and coming up with some different concepts and different ideas, we've really taken that feedback of what works for Vaughn and for this market compared to what we normally do in a standard passenger vehicle.
Our RECARO has been back here at the validation lab refining everything, doing what RECARO does, making sure this is ready for production, making sure this is ready for multiple vehicles, for anybody's needs. And based on that racing seat, we now have the Pro Racer XL ORV and the Cross Sportster ORV seats developed specifically for off-road. So we're here in the shaker table room, and actually today was the first time I sat in what will ultimately become the production seat that you guys will be able to grab, barring final validation. Yeah, that's way better. Yeah,
Oh yeah, it totally fits you better.
the new updated version
Yeah.
is definitely better. No, I'm pumped. Let's go try these things, man. They feel good sitting in here.
I do.
You guys are
Gotta get
killing
them on
it.
the road.
Let's do it.
What do you think?
It's awesome.
How did you feel like the seat held you doing that?
It's more secure, like than the factory seat. You're bouncing around in there all the time, grabbing for handbars and stuff to hold you
You
in.
didn't feel like
I
you
didn't.
needed to do that at
No,
all?
I didn't.
These seats they feel great. And through those whoops right there, I mean, we were flying through them and it just felt great. And there was a couple big hits, a couple times where it like got sideways and off-centered and hit pretty good. And I felt great, stayed composed, like not
Stayed in the
moving.
seat.
Didn't have to tighten my belts up once. So like,
Great. This has been a really cool day, a really different experience for us to be able to actually see what we've done, what we design, and how it actually fits into a vehicle, having a real driver give us immediate feedback and actually say, this seat works, this does what I needed to do. It's a really positive day.
The cushion and the foam, everything in the seat is just, it's so much more supportive. Like my body's kind of molded into it a little bit.
Yeah,
And
right.
you know, I'm really, really impressed with how well it's holding me in the seat. So
Oh, that's great to hear.
I love it. All the new updates. I mean, I'm excited to see us move forward with this.
All right, cool.
All right, good job.
At first glance of this seat, you can tell very easily that this has RECARO's DNA in it. Their passion, their engineering, and their experience. All the way down to just the fine details, from the stitching, the materials they're using. And one thing that I especially love that they paid attention to is the neck restraint area. Most all of the race vehicles that you look at after a certain amount of time have a cut in the seat from a neck restraint. They put a super durable, heavy duty material there that will help prevent getting that cut, which also will help prevent moisture and all of those elements we see in off-road getting in the seat. The other thing I really love about this seat is it has great visibility, which, as we all know, in off-road racing is key. With the crash test dummies. Well, I was a crash test and real world test dummy. I also did a ton of research alongside of the RECARO engineers, and we went back and forth. I mean, we tested so many different foam technologies, and with RECARO and their engineers testing with all the amazing tools that they have here. So this was a true collaboration. And in the end, I have the confidence to say that we've landed on the safest seat system that the off-road world has ever seen, and we have the data to back it up.